1998 wasn't just a season. It was baseball losing its mind. Two men turned home runs into something almost supernatural, and the entire world stopped to watch it happen. Not a rivalry built on hate, but pure statistical insanity. Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa didn't chase each other. They chased history, and history couldn't keep up with them. Because 61 home runs used to feel untouchable, a sacred number guarded by decades of baseball tradition. And suddenly it looked like it might not even survive July. That's how ridiculous this race actually became. Every game felt like something historic might happen. Every at-bat carried tension you could physically feel. And every swing had the potential to rewrite baseball history. Mark McGwire looked like a machine built for destruction. Massive frame, violent swing, and power that didn't make sense. When he connected, the ball didn't travel, it disappeared. Pitchers weren't competing, they were trying to survive impact. And even that usually didn't go well. Then there was Sammy Sosa, pure energy and controlled chaos. Every swing came with emotion, celebration, and undeniable charisma. He didn't just hit home runs, he performed them. Crowds didn't just cheer, they exploded with every swing. And somehow he kept matching McGwire blow for blow. That's what made this race feel completely unreal. Two completely different players producing identical chaos. One cold and mechanical, the other loud and electric, both rewriting what power looked like in real time. And baseball desperately needed this moment more than anything. Because just a few years earlier, the sport was broken. The 1994 strike had shattered trust between fans and players. Attendance dropped, interest faded, and baseball felt damaged. It needed something dramatic to bring people back. Something bigger than contracts, strikes, or business disputes. And this race delivered exactly that kind of energy. Fans returned in massive numbers to witness history live. Television ratings exploded as the chase intensified daily. Even people who didn't watch baseball suddenly cared again. Because greatness on this level is impossible to ignore. And both players kept pushing the limits even further. By August, 61 wasn't just reachable, it was inevitable. The question stopped being if and became who would do it first. And suddenly, the entire season became a countdown. Every swing felt like it might end the race instantly. Every game added more pressure, more tension, more anticipation. And neither player showed any signs of slowing down. Instead, they kept pushing each other to impossible heights, like two forces that only existed to collide. And when they finally did, baseball would never be the same. Because this wasn't just about breaking a record anymore. It was about redefining what the game even was. Now, the race wasn't just exciting, it was completely overwhelming. Because both players refused to slow down or fall behind. Every series felt like a highlight reel waiting to happen. Home runs weren't rare anymore. They became expected daily events. And expectations that high always come with massive pressure. But somehow, both players thrived under that pressure constantly. Instead of cracking, they elevated their performance even further. That's when the race stopped being realistic and became legendary. Because 61 home runs was finally within immediate reach. A number that once felt impossible now looked completely vulnerable. Fans tracked every swing like it was a live countdown clock. Media coverage exploded into non-stop updates and breaking headlines. Every broadcast turned into a full-time home run watch. Because history wasn't coming, it was already happening live. Then came the moment everything was building toward. September 8th, 1998. A swing that changed everything forever. The ball launched high, deep, and completely unforgettable. And just like that, 61 was no longer untouchable. Mark McGwire hit number 62 and broke the record. The stadium erupted like something historic had just exploded. Teammates celebrated, fans screamed, and baseball felt alive again. Even Sammy Sosa ran out to congratulate his rival. That moment felt bigger than competition. It felt symbolic. Like baseball itself was celebrating its own revival. But here's what made everything even more unbelievable. The race didn't end after the record was broken. It actually intensified in the most ridiculous way possible. Because now the question became how far this could go. And the answer turned out to be way further than expected. McGwire kept hitting like he wasn't human at all. And Sosa responded with one of the hottest streaks ever. It became less about breaking records and more about domination. By the end, both players had completely shattered expectations. Mark McGwire finished with 70 home runs that season. Sammy Sosa finished with 66. Still historically insane numbers. Those numbers didn't just break records, they rewrote possibility itself. Fans didn't just witness history, they witnessed something unbelievable. And for a moment, everything felt perfect again. Baseball was back, louder, bigger, and more exciting than ever. The sport had been saved by 2 swinging bats. At least that's what everyone believed at the time, because nobody was asking the uncomfortable questions yet. Nobody wanted to ruin something this perfect. And when something feels too good, people stop looking closely. But underneath all the celebration, something wasn't adding up. Power like this didn't just appear out of nowhere. And deep down, some people already suspected that. They just didn't want to say it out loud, because saying it would ruin everything they just witnessed. And nobody wanted to destroy a miracle in real time. This is where the story stops feeling magical and starts feeling suspicious, because nothing this perfect stays untouched forever in sports. And slowly, quietly, the questions started getting louder. Not from fans at first, but from whispers inside baseball. Questions about strength, recovery, and impossible physical transformations. Because bodies were changing in ways that didn't feel natural. Players were getting bigger, stronger, and faster almost overnight. And nobody really wanted to explain how that was happening, because explaining it would ruin everything fans just celebrated. But eventually, silence stops working when reality starts leaking out. Reports surfaced about performance-enhancing drugs spreading across the league. Not isolated cases, but something much bigger and more organized. And suddenly, the 1998 season looked very different in hindsight. What once felt heroic now started feeling uncomfortable and complicated. Because if the power wasn't natural, what did it actually mean? That question hit fans harder than any home run ever could, because it forced them to reconsider everything they believed. And reconsidering a miracle is never easy for anyone. Mark McGwire eventually admitted using performance-enhancing substances during his career, an admission that confirmed what many had already suspected quietly. And that confirmation changed how people viewed his record forever, because now 70 home runs came with an invisible asterisk. Sammy Sosa never fully admitted anything in the same way. But suspicions followed him just as closely over the years. And in public perception, suspicion can feel just as powerful. So the race that once saved baseball now complicated its history. Instead of pure celebration, it became a debated legacy. A moment both unforgettable and uncomfortable at the same time. And that contradiction is what makes this story so difficult. Because it was real, but maybe not completely honest. It was incredible, but possibly not entirely fair. And fans were left trying to balance both truths at once. Some chose to remember the excitement and ignore everything else. Others couldn't separate the performance from the controversy anymore. And neither side was completely wrong in their perspective, because both the joy and the doubt were equally real. That's what made the home run race so complicated later. It didn't disappear, it just changed meaning over time. From miracle to controversy, from celebration to debate. And once that shift happens, it never fully reverses. Because history doesn't forget, it just gets reinterpreted constantly. And the 1998 season became exactly that kind of history. A moment frozen between greatness and doubt forever. Which leads to the hardest question of this entire story. Was it still great if it wasn't completely clean? Or does that question miss the point entirely? Because maybe the truth is more uncomfortable than either answer. Maybe both things can exist at the same time. And that's exactly why this story never really ends. It just keeps getting argued differently with every generation. So what exactly was the 1998 home run race supposed to be? A miracle that saved baseball, or a lie that fooled everyone? Because somehow it managed to be both at the same time. And that contradiction is what makes this story impossible to settle. On one side, you have one of the greatest seasons ever played. 70 home runs, 66 home runs, numbers beyond imagination. A summer that brought fans back and revived the sport. The kind of moment leagues dream about, but rarely ever get. On the other side, you have something much harder to ignore. A system where performance was enhanced beyond natural limits. And a league that didn't exactly rush to stop it. Because the results were too exciting to question immediately. That's what makes this story feel almost uncomfortable to revisit. Because it forces you to question what you actually celebrated. Was it talent, chemistry, or something else entirely underneath? And more importantly, does that even change how it felt? Because emotions don't disappear just because context changes later. People still remember where they were when it happened. They remember the excitement, the noise, the unbelievable moments. And those memories are still completely real and valid, even if the story behind them became more complicated later. That's why this debate never really ends cleanly. Because you're not just arguing about numbers or rules anymore. You're arguing about how you remember something that felt perfect, and whether perfection still counts if it wasn't entirely honest. Some people choose to separate the moment from the context. They remember the excitement and ignore everything that came after. Others can't disconnect the performance from what enabled it. And for them, the entire story feels permanently altered. Neither perspective is completely right or completely wrong, because both are built on real parts of the same story. Which brings us back to the real question behind everything. Did this race save baseball, or did it damage it long term? Because in the short term, it absolutely brought the sport back. Fans returned, excitement surged, and baseball felt alive again. But in the long term, it introduced doubt that never disappeared. And doubt is something sports can never fully erase. Because once fans start questioning reality, everything changes. Even the greatest moments start feeling slightly uncertain. And uncertainty is the opposite of what sports try to create. So maybe the real answer is both uncomfortable and unavoidable. It saved baseball in the moment, but complicated it forever. A miracle that came with a cost nobody understood yet. And a cost that only became visible years later. Which makes this story feel less like a celebration now, and more like a warning about chasing something too perfect. Because when something looks impossible, it usually is. And ignoring that truth always comes with consequences eventually. So was it the greatest race ever, or the biggest illusion? Or maybe it was both. And that's what makes it unforgettable.